All right. I've got wet hair today, and I was just thinking as this was coming on that like I'm pretty apprehensive about what's going to come out as I'm reading and talking about this. Yeah, because this is the section organizations, leaders versus managers. And let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about what is going to arise because I have a lot. It's a pretty short section here. It's like half a page. It's like less than half a page, but I think my extrapolations or interpolation whatever is are gonna I'm gonna be riffing pretty hard on this one. Um for because for those of you who don't know me, who are watching this, I have been a leader for a lot of most of my career. I've been an executive or director, manager, and even in the very beginning of my career as a individual, I was just always, kind of like put in these like peer leadership positions, which is kind of funny because I was always like super supremely independent. So I'm not gonna riff down that road, but I will say what yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So my first thought when I looked at this as being the part that I'm gonna read today was remembering that after I wrote the book, I took an engagement in a company. I did kind of a little sort of, sort of baby leadership role. And my like the reason I took it, I went in very conscious of what I was trying to do. Um, this might be a little too much TMI. I was still producing the book, but the writing was over and I had time and I didn't realize how much. I actually thought it was going to be about 6 months. Turns out it was like closer to a year. But yeah, I mean, it was lovely experience. But the reason I took the engagement was there are 3 reasons, and I'll share 2 of them with you. No, I'll share 1 of them with you. One of them was that I had been in developing and working on the book for years. I'd conducted a lot of interviews, and did a lot of research, which I've already discussed. But, but one of the things that I was kinda, like, considered was that most like everyone that was in consideration and like being involved in the creation was like in one way or another in my bubble, and it would be like one person removed or thrice thrice removed between there. And so I had this kind of thing where I was like, what if this is like I need to test a little bit about how applicable this is in a general population, like in the general public, so to speak, to a certain extent. And I wanted to just see, it's like, okay, if I don't know the people, if they don't know me, like, how does this play out? And this is a way using Parinama that is not discussed in the book, on purpose. The reason is that the first move, and this is all that, like, really needs to be done, is to learn Parinama from the inside out. So the idea of using it to, um, with other people, and it's pretty natural that people use it initially, like, the way they kind of read it, they'll talk a lot of people talk to me about or people will talk to me about how they think about other people, you know? As they're reading it, they go, "Oh, this made me think of this person." And I very intentionally removed aspects of this where it does go that have to do with being able to, like, read other people because it's kind of a distraction to believe that it's like everything's sort of like happening out there. And it's like if everyone else could fix their shit, then it's like, then this would be like great. Um, so, right? Like, so, so, so there's a lot of stuff about being able to kind of like read people. And it also, I will say, as a leader, it's very helpful because I can read a person um like pretty fast as far as which hubs are in what condition. And the reason that Parinama is not written from this position of like, how do you use this to like lead other people? And the issue with this that is like a mistake I've made in the past is teaching people how to manipulate other people with this because it's really powerful. I mean, most of the time you're going to understand things about a person's nature that they haven't like fully come into like full command of, it's been, yeah, like the Jedi mind trick kind of thing. And this is where like the guru stuff gets like dangerous, is like the notion of someone who's like sort of like can see things about you and go, oh my gosh, wow. It's not like this is the stuff that you can get this out of doing Parinama. Like, and yeah, anyway, that's too far afield. Um, but so I will continue on. This one feels like it's gonna be like quite the riff. So either buckle up or maybe eject now before you come down the rabbit hole too far. This will be like a half a page that's like a 4-parter. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a bit in here. Um, but okay, I'll say one of the reason that this is inside out is that when I'm using this methodology to develop other people, it really like the how critical it is that my own process is relatively mature, that my own process is relatively developed because when so and actually this will actually this kind of coming together kind of well, just organically, is when I first started teaching TPM, like developing it, this whole thing about like teaching something to learn it, another story. It's negligent. I didn't, I had a sense of how powerful this was, but the depth of my own practice really, really meant that I was just getting really lucky as far as teaching the classes and working with people about like what was being like evoked and rising up with people, and like my ability to understand what it is that would happen. And also this minimum viable dose, which is like really keeping it to a point where it's not blowing out a pattern that's already like it's not activating a defense and even deepening it and or re-traumatizing it. Because it was kind of like neat party tricks to me in a sense. I mean, I don't want to diminish it, but it was like it just was like, wow, this works really well. And that I had this stuff, I had this kind of like thing where I was like, wow, I can like help someone make a really pretty significant shift in like one working session with them. And um yeah, yeah. And that was kind of like a thing where it's like, what could possibly go wrong here? Jesus. So back to like we'll go back. I'm a little giggly just because this is a part of my personality or my part of my old thing shtick that is kind of ridiculous and kind of weirdly delightful to me. Um, Not even weirdly, it's just funny. S But so one of the things about working with people is the depth of my own empathy for and also my understanding of how like, first of all, to be able to see where what's happening with them and understanding, like, any sign that there's any level of activation occurring is the sign to back off. It's not like, "Oh, good, we've got it, and, like, let's c like, now the work begins." It's literally like, "That's enough." Like, and also, like, really deep empathy, and, and something I do not discuss, um yet. I mean, it's just be for no particular reason other than it's just like it doesn't really seem like the time yet, is my own practice, and my own experiences in my practice. It's ongoing. Last week I had a, really, like, big experience in my own practice. Um, that level of understanding with other folks and that they're different than me. It's another part that we'll get into a little bit as we read about this. But I went and I did this little engagement, with a really lovely group of people. Turns out they were, like, really extraordinary, and I hadn't exactly planned for how great they would be, um, but it was just kind of being able to be like, "Oh, yeah, this is, like, there's the universality of this is, like, really plays out to be able to, like, see in people how these patterns, um, within the hubs, yeah, are organized." And one of the things is, like, the more, with people who work for you, if you kind of responsibly open the door, there's things that you can discuss and learn that wind up leading to breakthroughs. But the importance truly, truly is about being able to I guess I'd call it responsibly, but that's kind of like a little like overshooting. Um this type of practice, this type of awareness into the levels of like the layers of a person's psyche, this kind of awareness about like how it physically manifests, this kind of awareness about how to support someone and doing it at like a very small percent. Like the idea it's like this, as much as this is really like a form of like the Iron Man CrossFit, whatever, in terms of like the relative intensity to it, it's also has the opposing quality that you really need to only be doing this at a very like light level to be creating pretty significant shifts. So I'm going to read a little bit from this and we'll see where we go. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see where it goes. Good luck if you're still here. Oof. I have a lot like, I have a lot on this topic, so, yeah. Yeah, look, one of the things is that one of the things is with this is, I think I mentioned in, like, the last or the one before, is that one of the things with people reading the book is that they read it and I'm like, "Oh, like, you read it. Why do you not" like, they'll ask me a question. I'm like, "It's kinda in there," and I'll realize it's, like, one sentence in a section, and I think that even these read-alongs help with kinda, like, teasing some of this stuff out, and I think, like, my ultimate aspiration is that there'd be, like, more involvement where there's just, like, kind of more active discussions, like, in real time, talking through this stuff and hearing how other people are responding to it and, like, developing it in that sense. Like, this is alive. Like, I look at this as being alive, and this is kinda like the seed, and it's kinda like, all right, people, let's talk about it." Yeah. All right. All right. Do a little ASMR. I'm not good at it. Let's pretend that didn't happen. All right. So here we go. Okay. So managers demand compliance, leaders inspire commitment. Again, that is managers demand compliance, leaders inspire commitment. We're off to a great start. And one of the things about this idea of managers inspiring, like demanding compliance, one of the things too is not all managers can even have the ability to overtly command it. They their ability to lead is not in place. So the notion of who they're supposed to be relative to the folks that they have like duty of care for is like, you should be respecting me. It's kind of like a very like old world, like 1950s idea of hierarchy, which is like, you should just respect me. I mean, even the baboon colony, the head baboon is doing is like acts to like maintain a certain style of order, and there's like functions. Like you have a like impotent manager, and there's like kind of a lot of them. Sorry, world. That they're kind of like, I'm in this role, so I should be respected. And in certain cases, don't know how to demand the respect except through very passive aggressive acts or creating favoritism of people who like play the roles that make them feel, like validate their sense that they're worthy, of their respected position. So that's another thing. It's like, if you really require people to like this, it's like a validation that it's like the more you're needing from the people you're responsible for. I mean, it's even like, it would be like with parenting with children. It's like, if you need the kids to like, if you're not ultimately in service of what's best for them to the best of your ability to understand, and they're able to like tap into your needs and your deficits in the particular role, their ability to be supported, parented, overseen is compromised, even though in the short term for people, they might think, oh, this is great. It's not great. For the people who are winning in that dynamic. Yeah, so sentence one, we've made it. Okay, leaders create a place for people to connect to their purpose and to develop mastery with the dignity of autonomy. Managers create a place that conforms to their own comfort. Yeah. This one has a lot of depth to it, surprising, because I will say that so as it relates to the engagement that I was in briefly during the production of the book, one thing, and this is like I thought I was like a really like good leader, and I am to a certain extent, yeah, but in this engagement it was the first time that I really understood that as a manager, oftentimes advice is offered that is appropriate for oneself, that relates to one's own ability to succeed. And now, once I came back in with kind of a parinama like as an actual framework, not just me kind of riffing off of like, how do I think I should do this, which was pulling from this stuff in a way, that it's like a framework where I can see where I'm like, oh, this is just something that, in terms of my own and one's own self-awareness being key here, is that I could see, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not really the right person to be supporting the thing that this person needs. and then solving for that in some way. But also knowing that other folks have ways of doing things that are very different than what your own perception of the right way to do something. It's very successful, very effective, and to be able to get out of the way and realize, like, yeah, I don't think I have a lot to offer this person, because actually where they're weak, I'm also weak. And or just that their style is stronger than mine, but where, like, it's just a thing. But just the individuality of folks, the individuality of people doing the same job, and like managers will try to create a world in their own image. They'll hire people that are all very similar to them, because they'll be able to identify strength in the way that they understand intimately, because it's their strength, versus understanding, this is what we need to do, here's a bigger vision for this about how it could be even better, and then beginning to fill in like diverse methodologies and ways and approaches that people can be bringing to the table as far as like how to achieve something. And in my experience, I will say that is how extraordinary results happen. It's like I'm very familiar with people that are like, like, how do we get to 100% of our goal? And I'm talking about, like, this is how you get to like 400, 500, like, and like this thing about bringing in diversity and understanding how to bring a group together, like, so hiring for certain qualities that have to do, where you're actually starting to pull in like aspects that aren't currently represented in a team. And this is perspectives, that can be like understood in terms of like ethnicities and ages and genders and things like that. And there's also the other layers that have to do with, like, okay, this person's an engineer, this person's an artist, this person's, like, and it's like bringing this thing together where you're looking for folks with like a similar quality in terms of like desire and like attitude and work ethic and passion and curiosity, like these qualities, and like the drive, like being, kind of liking to achieve things or whatever. I'm talking about my own things. And like you're bringing this together, and that it's uncomfortable. There are people that you aren't really like right for you, as far as that you're going to connect with them. But they can be respected and appreciated within the team. Like the other thing about building a cult of people that you like being around. I get that. I tend to do it. There is something to that, but also being able to like self-identify when there's like a personality difference, and being able to be enough of a leader that it's like that's not going to be that you can like see past that. And your own biases about like that kind of stuff. Right. So, okay. So coaches, teachers, and others in positions of authority oversee the places where children interact outside the home. Some act like managers and some act like leaders. Managers seek to standardize to the point of dehumanization and demoralization. It's like micromanagers. People like the thing is, in if you don't even understand yourself very well, it's gonna be really, it's like the thing that you'll be able to do is kind of like sort of like lead people similar to you, because then you'll have some context about like what would work for them. But like the idea of being able to be perceptive and curious enough to be able to create an environment, classroom, whatever, organization, whatever, that has a sort of a bit larger, wider aperture is, for a manager type, is like absolutely not going to be possible for them. That's why if you're in a situation where you work for someone like this and there's a conflict, like, you really need to be engineering your way out. For a million reasons. I mean, one is that you are past their capacity, and the other is that your own growth is like you're is I mean, it's all that you're going to really learn how to do is function in like dysfunction, right? And for many of us, we're already like pretty good at that. Pretty good. I mean, sometimes you can't leave, and so that involves right sizing the situation to understand what's happening, and instead of like every day is a new outrage at the exact same dynamic, being able to kind of like level set yourself to be like, this is what's happening here, and where emotional regulation is absolutely like one of like a godsend, to every day be outraged. It's like, yeah, it's the same thing happening every day. This is so common that people will find someone's behavior like atrocious or self-centered or like lost in poor direction. And every day, can you believe it? It's like, yeah, I can. So they're doing the exact same thing they always do. People come to me, like they used to come to me for like business guidance, professional guidance rather. And, in some cases they'd have like the same character, like same person, and it would be the same thing where I was like, "Can you believe it? Can you believe it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the same same story. It's the same story." So it's like, "Well, what do you do then?" It's like, "Well, you kind of like you're like, okay, I understand that this is like the situation. This is what is to be expected. This is I like understand that this person is chaotic. I understand that this person has like, these like personality issues." So the at the very least, you're stopping the shock, the surprise. It's like, yeah, this is what's gonna happen. It's often the leaders from our childhood who saw our authentic leaders from our childhood who saw our authentic selves, who provide a trail of breadcrumbs to follow when we excavate our authentic selves. So it's often the leaders from our childhood who saw our authentic selves who provide a trail of breadcrumbs to follow when we excavate our authentic selves. So, a prompt I want to offer up here is take a moment to think about this. A grandparent, a parent, a teacher, someone in your faith community. Um, I I grew up so I grew up with so my mother was pretty much constantly reinforcing kind of like how unremarkable I was, and coming up with new ways to like tell that story to me. And and so the people that told me things, even my father in my earliest of years, who reflected upon me how generous I was, like how clever in particular ways, how cute I was, these things. Um, think about grandparents. Think about these people in the earliest stage of your life. And right now might not be the right time. So set aside some time and just think about what are the things that because of this, like this continuity. Just feel like that was always there. And also the importance of seeing other children. See, as an adult, even adults, tell people, tell people, tell people. What do you see that's incredible about them? One thing I'll say in terms of my own style, this I hadn't connected this until right now, but in terms of my own style of leadership is that if I intend to really very actively develop somebody, and it's been a hot minute, I wouldn't even consider this me having done this in a while now professionally. Um, well, yeah, maybe no. Maybe I've done it. Yeah, maybe I don't know. Whatever. Strike that. One of the first things I do is I look for what's remarkable about them. So I look at their work. I review their work. So it's really very rarely I do. Almost like never would I say this is like incorporating what other people tell me about the person. I look at their work. And I ask them, and I look for the, and it's like, okay, I see this thing, these qualities, and I'll ask them. I'll say, "You're very good at this. You're very good at these things. Do you know that you're good at these things?" And it's like in my heart of hearts, it's like I feel this thing like, oh, somebody said yes, but nobody's ever said yes. People have always been like, huh, or maybe like, I guess, but it's usually no or silence. And then we kind of spend time talking about that. And then and then like the next moves are that it's kind of like, okay, well, here's the thing to consider to kind of like optimize. It's like, try this instead of being like, here's the thing you need to do to be better. What you're doing. I mean, because the thing is it's kind of like, like the idea that you start with telling somebody, okay, I looked at your work and if here's all the stuff you need to be better at. Like that's just not, I mean, the thing is like our assets are our assets, and there's all these mistaken ideas that it's just like keep fixing, keep fixing, keep fixing. And it's like, if you just keep fixing, it's like, sure, 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 sure. But first of all, it's like, do you know why you're here? It's like, do you know that the reason you're here is because you have talent, you know? And even the thing, it's like, do you see that in certain cases, it's like, do you see these are the things that you're really good at? And, ultimately steering somebody into doing something that's like a better fit for them. So it's not always that you're like, this is a great fit. It's like sometimes it's like, here's like the things that are extraordinary about you. But to do this, it means you have to really watch and listen and pay attention. And this is where I think we get a leader manager problem, which is a manager is probably not going to have the ability to remain present in seeing something and attending to it and being curious. That's a bell. So what they'll do is just project on it. They'll see like little signs and they'll be like, that's enough for me to have all my notes on this is like, here's what I think. This one's happened to me. Or I once saw, it's like that kind of thing. So the thoughtfulness of being able to actually like see someone and try to remove the projections is to the best of your ability. It's going to be absolutely impossible to do completely. But to bring curiosity. Yeah. Oh, well, here we go. So qualities that contribute to leadership are humility and curiosity mixed with a courage and ability to stand one's ground. Again, that's qualities that contribute to leadership are humility and curiosity mixed with the courage and ability to stand one's ground. Managers who use authority to demand compliance tend to struggle with communication skills and lack the fortitude to advocate for the people who depend on them. They're individuals in positions of authority who are primarily concerned with their own interests. I'm going to read that again. Managers who use authority to demand compliance tend to struggle with communication skills and lack the fortitude to advocate for the people who depend on them. They're individuals in positions of authority who are primarily concerned with their own interests. And I will tell you that most of my experience now in my career has been that these are people who work for me. I mean, like my direct experience of like seeing this phenomenon has been leaders or managers who work for me. Some of these managers are vice presidents. I mean, really, it's like there's absolutely no way to be able to like, and they're really nice people. Uh-oh. Yeah, you can't tell if somebody's nice. Like some people are so nice, but they're so passive and their own internal need for approval, their own fear. I mean, this is just once again, let's party on with this. It's going right up the hubs is when you have someone in a position of authority who is fearful of their own physical security. It's absolutely going to play out in terms of how they look at hoarding resources. Emotional, like second hub, when you're talking about someone who is emotionally literate, this is once again going to play into the ability to respond and be dynamic as far as relating to other people who have different styles than yours, being able to see, being able to be responsive. And the third hub, the ability to stand on one's own. To stand on one's own, to be able to actually like hold your integrity, instead of trying to either dominate people or be validated by people that you perceive to be more powerful than you. And then once you get up into these upper hubs that we're in, like the fourth hub is ultimately about how you understand how people relate to each other. I've seen some managers actually have like decent capacity here, but without the underlying qualities, it's like an absolute shit show where like, and I've hired them because, in my own process of learning, it's like this fourth hub thing where it's like, oh, they really understand people, but they don't have the capacity to stand up for them, take a stand where they're putting themselves at risk. They don't have the ability to actually have like a dynamic emotional capacity to be able to relate to people different from themselves. And they're totally afraid of their physical, like their safety. So they throw anyone under the bus. They'll just do it. And these are the ones you can't really see. A lot of these, like in the third hub, we get into, kind of the kissing up and kicking down stuff. I mean, one thing, told you this one was going to take a minute. One of the things that is really unfortunate that some folks never get to see this from the vantage point of like watching it without having like the foot kicking them in the face is seeing that there are managers who are really unskilled and maybe were good at the individual job, and were kind of like picked as a result of that. But the thing about being responsible for other people and being able to have a contextual understanding of an organization and making the best decision for the org, not like opinion, like personalities and things that feel good and stuff. Like being able to do that is a really different capacity than being able to be just like good at the job. And so one strategy, and I will share this, one strategy, and this is really less, this is more common than I wish it was, is you'll get managers who will literally not really be capable of like very much, but they kind of play act. They do this theatrical thing about like having a bias for action. So like this bias for action is like, pointing out, they'll always be hiring people that are gonna save the organization and change everything, or they're firing people who they're identifying as low performers, and the difference between those 2 roles is nothing. It's the same. They just have a cycle of always appearing like, "I'm bringing in great people, and I have no tolerance for low performance." And so people that are stuck in this People who are stuck in this are usually unaware of what role they're playing for this type of low skilled, like, authority figure manager. And when I had a, I guess I'll call him a boss, let's call him a boss, who had once said to me that when you fire somebody, you change them. And whether it's true or not, I think it kind of is. So their take on it was being really mindful of it. Um, their take was to be really mindful, and so for people who have been fired and feel like they have some type of thing where it's like, "Somebody knows I'm not good." Somebody, like, the thing is that a manager doesn't know how to develop you. They only know, I mean, they just don't know how to. So it's just always gonna be on your shoulders to either fit in or have the natural talent, have the natural talent, or or be, sort of like punished, and there'll be a lot of play acting. There's a lot of play acting, and that can be really confusing for someone, especially as it relates to your livelihood, because it can be hard to see this experience objectively. And there are also people who get fired for having really bad, yeah, so I'll say also as just a counterpoint, another reason that people get fired is not understanding that the organization, like the emotional health of an organization is critical. And so for people who are being like malcontents and saying, "This is the worst, this is this is that," and like making people feel really bad, being super critical. Yeah. That one I don't feel bad about. I mean, I will say that when if that is something people don't understand how to do, which is like understand that like making people feel bad or enhancing the sense that of like, you're like the boss is bad or the organization screwed up or this, people are enhancing that, um, are really doing a disservice to what I'd consider to like the lower 3 hubs for people, because there's the fantasy that is always harboring this fantasy that there's this place where you work that everything's great. There's a place where all the systems are in place, everybody's a leader, everyone you work with is somebody, like, it is absolutely just not. There's just no place. Terrible. They're all terrible. And the thing is like every person's a shareholder in an organization in terms of like the contribution to the type of culture that they want to be creating. So pointing out the things are, like garbage and this is that. And did you notice this and this and that? It's like my advice for people. And this is like super, I imagine people would go, oh my God, that's, antithetical or whatever, is just like stop having like an opinion about how bad everything is at your job. It just doesn't matter. I mean, the thing about if people are being treated poorly is like it was the one place I'd put an exception in. And they always kind of are. So maybe that's even a tougher one. But that's look, it's the thing. Just don't don't emotionally engage in things that are like really zero yield. Like pointing out problems, especially in a workplace, it just doesn't do anything. It just makes things kind of worse. Try to like try to fix it or just be like, yep, it's dysfunctional here. We're just doing the best we can with what we have, making a living, drawing our boundaries around it. If it's terrible, if it's truly terrible, leaving. You can't leave. Like this is how you survive it, is you stop taking it so personally and making kind of like coughing up and stirring up all the crap about why it sucks. Yeah, please comments, please people find me on this. I'd love to hear them. But I'm right. I'm right on this. Okay. I really am. Okay. Yeah. So managers think they're supposed to have all the answers and believe they're supposed to be the most talented person on the team. So they're either highly defensive and or hire mediocre talent. Oh, that's just it. It really is. It's author Simon Sinek writes in Start with Why: How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. He writes, quote, "The role of a leader is not to come up with great ideas. The role of a leader is to create an environment where great ideas happen." Yeah. Yeah, like one of the crossroads, I remember this. I tell the story a lot. So if you know me, if you've worked with me, you're like, oh God, how like can you just give me a timestamp on when to fast forward this? But here we go. So when I first was put into a leadership position, I was one of these people who was like a super lone wolf, had no interest in becoming a manager, and manager in the title term or in both, whatever. I had no interest in it. I was really good at the job. It's like there's more to it than that. But I didn't want to become a leader. And so in this one company, I done incredibly well. Um yeah, like change, like trajectory, like very huge impact in terms of like in my individual contribution. Like won awards for it and lots of recognition and oh my God. Yeah. So that happens. So that was enough for me. I was like, this is good. I like this. This is all and I was having fun. I was liking doing the job. I was liking figuring it out. And there was just a notion that's like, no, we want more of this. So the way to solve for that is that you build out an organization. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, okay, I'll kind of cut to the chase here. And so so there were some applicants for the job, and just to okay, this is actually like I was like in sort of hero mode. People would sort of part the seat, when I walked down the hall or whatever. I had this like, it was like, oh my gosh. Um, it was like held in really high regard. So it kind of made me beyond reproach in a sense. And I was getting really a lot of respect. I was able to I was brought into meetings that were at levels I'd never been considered for, with people that were just, that I was like, "How am I sitting at the same table as these people?" I went to, like, a state college, and I was sitting with people, like, from, the top minds. And anyway, and so I was really like, my thing was is as, like, a singular person doing this, I think there were a few other people that were trying and, like, not succeeding, but my fear was that someone would come in and be better than me, and just the whole thing would be over. Like, my position, my relative position, the joy of, like, in this company, like, I'd be exposed as a fraud. Like, it would just be like, "Oh, this isn't actually that hard. What she's doing isn't that hard." And they'd, like, lap me or triple, like, whatever. Like, the idea that it was like I was so this thing, so I remember this impasse moment because I'm making the story a little too long, so I apologize. But there was this thing where it was like, "Okay, you either lead this or we're gonna hire somebody over you." And I knew hiring somebody over me was gonna be really, like, problematic. Like, yeah, I mean, come on. Um, so I got the initial applications, and, like, one person had been top of their class at business school. Another person had done, like, international business, and gone to an Ivy League school. And I remember being like, "Oh, yeah, here they are." The 2 I can't remember because I know who the people are. Um, and just being really, yeah, like, I was like, there's kind of like this, like, impact, this, like, 2 roads diverged kind of moment where I was like, "These are the people that'll easily overtake me. They're gonna show that," because they had the, like, the real world trimmings of people who were, like, superior to me. And so I remember it was like a real, like, it's very memorable because it was like this decision where we're talking about manager versus a leader. And this thing about hiring mediocre talent is that I just bit the bullet. And I was like, "You know what? Uh, they're gonna have to be better than me. For me to do what I'm about to do, it's gonna be a very different job than what I'm doing right now. For me to do this job, they're gonna have to be better than me for me to be successful in this role." So even, I guess, my desire to be good at what I was doing overtook my desire, like, in some ways, to for my own, like, self whatever. There's a whole bunch of things, this little bouquet of Parinamisms in that suite of like, that psychological lineup. But so anyway, so I hired them, you know, and I won't go on anymore about that, but I'm just gonna say I remember for the rest of my career, I remember that impasse because I remembered the agina of sitting there and being like, "I'm about to hire my first hires are gonna be people that just expose me," but make doing it because I knew just that in order for me to succeed in this function, I needed them to be better than me. And I'll say that for the rest of my career, this is something that made me pretty, like, made me very successful, was being able to continue to hire people that scared me. It'd be like, "Whoa," like, "Okay, we need them." That's a key difference because it's a little scary. It's still some of the last hires I made, I had that thing of like, "Oh my god, they're gonna see that I'm, like, kinda a has-been," right? There's always a reason, or just to be like, they're, whatever. So, there's that. So, okay, so the Parinama method leadership style involves healthy, dynamic functioning in our hubs, specifically between the power of individuation in the third hub, and communication skills in the fifth hub. See Chapter 8. It balances leaders' needs with the individual needs of their people, along with the long-term good of the entire group and organization. So I'm going to read that again. It balances leaders' needs with the individual needs of their people, along with the long-term good of the entire group and organization. Yeah, I think this was either this section was longer and was cut down, or I just have so much to say on the topic that it's like, I'm like, yeah, that's that for this. I think in the context of this book that it was like left to that, because it's been a huge part of my life. So I have a lot, leadership, ultimately, and it's just occurring to me as like a very natural outcropping, or like next move that will be part of the development of Parinama. But yeah, I mean, look, a leader, how I've always looked at it is that a leader is really defined by their capacity to make decisions for the greater good of the group, not considering like individuals, like considering like how do we advance the organization holistically with like the best interest of the entire group considered, which is something that is, from an individual's perspective, is often going to be seen from a very like limited scope. It's going to be seen from like what's good for me. And that's the difference. That's the difference, is that an individual in the group is going to be like, this is how this impacts me, versus being like, I am responsible. My duty of care here is for the greater good of this group as it relates to the furthering of this organization. So as a result of that, it's like, it can be really, it can be challenging for people. And this is, likely why I have a strong position on malcontents in an organization who's so discontent. Because even if the manager, even the authority, the boss, called the boss, is bad, it's really not, it's really does not benefit you in a professional organization to be outspoken about the shortcomings of an individual. Yeah, I mean, and it's all relative. Some are objectively terrible. Some are objectively terrible. Some are like just are on their continuum in terms of their development, as we all are. So, things that they're, possibly going to grow into or grow out of are in the process of happening. And your relationship with that person will, if for your career, may last for decades. And the fact that you like really attach yourself to a particular time period, winds up not being beneficial. I mean, this is one of the things, like emotional regulation is something where people are like, this is just who I am. Like, this is where second hub has some really key areas that are confusing for people, because it's like my feelings are like, speaking my feeling is my integrity. But it's kind of like your thoughts aren't who you are, and your feelings are transient. And the fact that they do need an outlet is absolutely true, but it's finding the outlets to express things where they're not actually like exacerbating and creating more for other people to process. So it's kind of like, if you can contain the the rage, the frustration, if you can, and then actually find an outlet for it that's constructive, then the ability to act out of your integrity is not going to be just contorted and distorted by lack of control. As far as even, when I think about like my own practices and my own career and my ability to actually take a stand for what is right for people in an organization. And one of the things that's like established my leadership in a way that has been very confronting for managers is that I'm not unhinged. I'm very matter of fact. I can make a very clear case. I can actually like interpret so that so it's shifted into making sense in the context that folks in the organization are thinking. If it's just anger, if it's just this person's incompetent and they're an asshole, it just blows back on you because it's all that's seen is it's like white noise, what's coming out of your mouth. And it's like you not being able to keep your shit together. It's emotional regulation. It really, I mean, the idea that it's like, that this is me being me. I respect that. But I also, as far as being able to advocate for people, I mean, look, there's a healthy amount of having some like fire to you, but the key is that you're in control of it. It's clear. It's like it's like you have this tube of fire, and instead of it just setting the world on fire, you're literally like a fire hose able to like con- contain it and then direct it in the right place. I'm talking very specifically about work, but I imagine this kind of relates to other things. But yeah, as promised, this was like extra super long. Um, you know, this will be a continuate. This will be something in the parinama sphere that extends out. Yeah. I mean, like for a number of reasons. One is like creating the organization around this that supports this, and also, opportunities for teaching people how to use it. Because ultimately, when I've thought like who's the target audience for Parinoma, it's people who are responsible for other people ultimately. And that's broad because that's everybody. Everybody's responsible for other people. But like when I think about like the target, a teacher, parent, boss, citizen of the world, just adult. It's for adults. The target. I mean, let's be real. But that, it's one of the things I think with, and now even seeing it with Parinoma for beginners, seeing that as being this actually, like me realizing this in real time, that being a framework that would really support a leadership development program. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So much promise here. So the next section, so we're only gonna do part 1. It's 1 hour. 1 hour and it'll change here. So cultural belonging with anima and animus is gonna be next, and then intimate belonging with Eros and Thanatos. Yeah, we've got topics. We've got topics here at Parinama. Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too because this is like this actually kind of felt like a little reprieve in a sense, like, from kind of what else we've been talking about. It's a little bit separated because it's sort of taking us out of this kind of thing, which is, like, about going like, internal, and sort of is like, "Okay, here it is in the world." It's interesting placement too, like, placing this, between family belonging and the, culture belonging with anima and animus. It's kinda like, what I mean, this really could have been over I don't know, whatever, it's fine. It's fine. It's interesting. Anyway, thank you so much. If you've made it this far, in my own humble estimation, I think it's a really interesting topic, and, I really welcome any comments or, feedback, challenges. Challenge me. This morning, I'll fight back. I'll fight back. No, I will no, I'm very no, that's like that's a joke, sort of. No, like, I really am interested, and I will say that one thing that is I really shouldn't joke about that, is that folks tend to feel reluctant to speak up with contrary opinions to mine. So I really want to actively welcome that if you feel differently than what I'm saying. I'd like to hear it. Grow me. All right. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. And look, we've been at it so long, my hair is now dry. Well, sort of dry. Yeah, look, that's what an hour will do. It'll dry hair. All right. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye.